Greetings all and welcome to the Art and Mind Village Chat. I'm Fred Johnson from the Straz Center for the Performing Arts, community engagement specialist and artist in residence here at the Straz Center, along with our Vice President of Community Engagement and Education, Miss Alice Santana. And we are happy to host this edition of the Arts and Mind Village Chat, which is a collective gathering over the year where we come together and have conversations that combine arts and science in a health conversation about the importance of artistic expression as an important pathway in alignment with our health community, our science and research community, in really manifesting individual and collective health for individuals, communities, and our world. We take this journey in cooperation with the International Institute of Art and Mind at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland. They are our collaborative partner with us when they can be. They are out in the world doing important things, and so we honor them as they're on their journey and include them in this conversation today, albeit they're not here physically. We are so excited to be able to have this conversation today. I have said for a really long time that this journey will not be complete. And one of my great teachers, one of my great master teachers said to me that the journey of understanding and balance and health and wholeness and really the positive moving forward of our nation can only happen when we acknowledge and honor our First Nation members of our community, our First Nation family. So we are joined today, first and foremost, by two important members of our Arts and Mind Village chat team, Miss Nicole Sutton, who is the reason and the blessed person who has given us the opportunity to be with our friends from the Indigenous Peoples Task Force in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Miss Viev Rada Price from Taya Artistry, the founder and co-artistic director of Taya Artistry in New York City. My friends, we are joined today by members of the Indigenous Peoples Task Force from Minneapolis, Minnesota. They are First Nation family members. They are our link today to really understanding thousands of years of tradition and the knowingness of the connection to our land and the importance of creativity in all of its forms and the full measure of our connectedness, the foundation and those who preserved and were first here on this land that we walk now. And so I'm going to kind of collectively introduce, and then we'll get into really having the opportunity to talk specifically about your roles and the incredible contribution that you share with us today. I'll first start with Miss Suzanne Nash. Suzanne, I know that you have been a part of this journey for a really long time and a real visionary. So Suzanne Nash, and then Sir Curtis Kirby, who we are really excited to have a conversation, who is, I know, foundationally does many things and is at the very core of what happens with theater and what happens with art. And he is joined by, and you'll pardon me for just reading because I have that short-term thing. Miss Jennifer Cortez, who now is the youth theater director's assistant of their theater company, and Mr. Nathan Berglund. And Nathan is a member of the theater company and also works with the youth group as well. So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here with us. Suzanne, I will start with you. Again, I got a really exciting phone call a number of months ago from Nicole saying, listen, Fred, as we take this art and health journey, it's really important for us to connect with and have the opportunity to learn from and to include in what we do Suzanne Nash and the amazing work that she does with the Indigenous Peoples Task Force. So, Suzanne, will you start by just telling us about the task force and telling us about the history and your history with this effort? I think you're on mute, Suzanne.
I'm on mute, of course. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for the introduction and the kind words. I work at Indigenous Peoples Task Force, 22 years strong. And we started off as a organization focused around HIV case management services in the beginning of the early 80s. HIV was a stigma, and if you had HIV, you were outcasted or you couldn't get health services at that time. Insurance companies cut you off completely. And so a small group of Native women, including our executive director, Sharon Day, collectively got together to have a meeting regarding some of their friends and family that have been infected by this. Carol, who was a nurse at that time, who was infected by blood transfusion. And then on Sharon Day, her brother got contacted with the HIV and AIDS, or HIV. And so, and then there was a few other people that they knew within their circles, and they knew that something had to be done. So they collectively got together and decided to write a small grant for case management services to help people get services. But at the same time, they had a national group of people that got together to do education, prevention, and awareness around HIV and AIDS. So during that time, the education piece came out of the Agitchada program. It's a program that we use at the task force that's 35 years in the making of theater production and education. And through that, they did HIV skits around the world, mostly in the United States, around HIV. And they just did small skits on sexual health, HIV, the stigma. Some were focused on racism. I think a lot of their travelings, but they focused on sexual health with the kids, but also to teach the awareness about HIV, but also to change that stigma that it was just gay people that, were getting HIV, and they wanted to, strengthen that community, and that this is not just, somebody who's gay who got it. They wanted the real story and how HIV was contracted. So through that process, they grew because after this first small grant for $15,000 to do case management services, they wrote another grant. In the meantime, they became a 501c3, and they were at that time looking for an executive director. Our executive director, now Sharon Day, worked at the DHS Health State Department in the Chemical Dependency Division, helping to get Native people into treatment and women, and finding out why at that time Native people weren't getting access to treatment at all. It was very small or little. So through conversations and time, they asked her to be the executive director. She took a short leave, which she thought would be to get it off the ground and going, and she ended up staying at Indigenous Peoples Task Force. And it grew from case management service to housing, to sexual health education. And then, of course, the theater department grew. And then we got into commercial tobacco and started to reclaim traditional tobacco as our first medicine. So really, we grew based upon the needs. If we had stayed just in HIV and awareness, we probably wouldn't be where we are today. But our focus grew based upon the community needs. And so some of that changed over time. We still do HIV, we still do case management, we still do sexual health. We now do harm reduction for alcohol and drug use. And we've expanded our youth program to AODT and the theater has grown from that. And so our programs have grown over time. And so that's where we are today. And then Curtis joined us, I want to say 11 or 12 years ago. He's
13 years ago.
13 years ago. Okay. He joined in and helping out with our youth programs. He came from White Bear Lake High School as a para, and he stayed. He was coming in temporarily, but he ended up staying, and he's really grown. And so he's been able to expand that theater piece to what it is today. We've taken some of that Get You Down curriculum, we've adapted it, and we've, used some of the tools that we have now, but also he also works for Pangea Theater as a theater assistant director over there, growing and working alongside Duponker. So we're happy to be here, and that's kind of the story behind the task force. We also have Indigi baby food. We got into growing our own food. We grow traditional tobacco. We just launched the baby food this year. So we now have baby food that has no preservatives or sugar in it. And we use our cultural teachings. And Nathan grew up with us, and Jennifer did when they started in our programs when they were 11. They've gone through all the programs at the task force. We had suicide prevention, the Way Been a Gay program, the theater program. They've done skits and plays. They've traveled around the world. They've been in lots of theater productions. And Jennifer now works with us, and Nathan worked with us in the garden program, helping us grow and take care of that cultural foods to create the baby food. And he's now working alongside doing some theater work with Kirby and growing his art to where he wants to be in this world. So, yeah.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you for that overview. One of the big conversations that we have here in our Art and Mind conversations is the importance of artistic expression in all of its forms. It appears that probably the broadest way forward so far has been in the area of music, because there's been a lot of research in music. And we also really, really honor the power of theater. And so, Sir Curtis, I'd love to begin the conversation with you and Jennifer and Nathan. You personally, just how do you see, and how has theater and artistic expression been important in your life? And also in terms of the Native community, in terms of, your ability to be able to share information and empower. So talk about that, because one of our goals as artists is we actualize, and you all have clearly actualize and use theater as a way to communicate and empower. So talk a bit about your journey as an artist, and then about the theater company.
Yeah, bonjour, Wendigo and Dishnakas, Maingen and Dodem, Gakabikong and Dunjaba. What I just said to you is that my name is Giant Heart. I am from the Wolf Clan. I am Ojibwe, and I am from Minnesota. My given name at birth is Sir Curtis Kirby III, but really everyone just calls me Kirby. But just to step back a second, and I would love to answer that question, but I just want to pay homage to how we got here, because truthfully, like Suzanne said, Ogechi, that was our first program, and when we first started going, and we created our first, produced our first piece, we called in Spider Woman Theater, and Spider Woman Theater is the oldest Indigenous theater company in the United States. And they came here from New York City, and they stayed in my grandmother's house, and they helped us devise the first piece, was called My Grandmother's Love. And that was a amazing piece that weaved in stories of family, love of grandmothers, a lot of times in Indigenous communities, with the things that we've went through with the trauma, boarding schools, the Child Welfare Act and things like that. We were raised by our grandmothers and our grandparents. And so it has a deep inspiration and a deep, journey. And we also worked with Phyllis Jane Rose from the Foot of the Mountain Theater. And those were some of the first people that we were trained by. And those are real titans in the field, And so I just wanted to make sure I paid homage to them, because without them, we wouldn't be here today. And like Suzanne said, throughout the years, we've worked with people like Pangea Theaters that are real shift makers in the national scene and our local scene and too. And so really just giving us that opportunity to giving us that platform to be Indigenous theater. And I think as Indigenous people, a lot of things we don't have. It's not in a book. It's not in a Bible. It's not in a Quran. It's not in these forms. And a lot of things were passed down orally because not until 1978 were we even allowed to practice our language and our ways in public. And I remember even in the 90s when I was a kid, we would go into ceremonies and we would black out our windows. Because that's what we are used to doing. And now, thankfully, we're in the day of age where we can tell our stories out loud and we can, and so that's our biggest way of doing things. And often we love to focus on our youth, and we've never moved away from that model. And I think we changed the model, but that's whatever's going on. When Standing Rock was going on and they were building pipelines to our country, we did our research. We went in, we went to Standing Rock. We took our kids to other sacred sites of water. Let them know about other protests and that this wasn't just a new fight. This is a fight that's been going on, So just as HIV, just as other things, right now we're dealing with a big opioid epidemic. And so that is our new focus, and we're writing a piece and creating. So like Suzanne said earlier, whatever the need is, that's where we go. That's how we shift, we're never focused just on one thing. We're focused on the needs of our community, and that's what and we use our songs, our teachings. We have a very rich culture. We have a very deep culture, and a lot of things that we do. I think people generally just know as powwows, but we really take it a step further and like to bring in our cultural backgrounds, because just like anywhere else, just like Africa, just like these, like we're not just Indigenous people are not just one people, we're many of people, even as I sit here, me, Jennifer, Nathan, like we're all different, all from different nations, and we really like to honor that and, have our youth bring their full authentic selves. And, I learn from them all the time. And so like Nathan and Jennifer, they've been with me since they were 11 years old, and now they're both 19-ish, 20, 19, 20, and so they've been with me for 8 years, and they'll continue. Oftentimes when we look in our communities, and even like in the United States, there's a big gap in leadership, in terms of, who is leading. And so that's why we like to bring them on and, make sure that they're the ones that are stewarding the youth and, relating to the youth, because they will be our next leaders, and they are the leaders of now. And so that's just my quick overview. And so, like I said, I've been doing this for 13 years. We've grown tremendously. Some of these young people have been all as far as Ireland they went to Ireland last year to perform in at a climate event, and we have a piece that's on water, we have a piece that's on bullying. So we have all, and definitely our basic Osema, as a Anishinaabe people, we believe tobacco first, and that's that plant that guides us and helps us. And so we always center our work around the tobacco work that we do as well. And that's probably it's the way we stay culturally rooted. And I'll leave it there and save it for some more questions and pass it off to Jennifer and Nathan.
That's great. That's fantastic. Thank you, Sir Curtis. Yeah, Jennifer, share with us what this journey has been like for you and continues to be.
Yeah, so to be honest, when I was younger, like I was really shy, and I feel like being and part of like a company that really wanted to see me like grow and be my best self, like I've learned to have so much confidence within myself, and I've been like learning how to self-love and stuff, and I think they really did truly teach me like what love was and how to like take care of myself. And we've been through so many like different stages. We've been on different reses, and I met so many different people, and like it's so nice to be surrounded by people who are just like me and are also looking for like the Ojibwe teachings and things like that. And I was able to meet some people who taught me how to bead and who taught me how to make ribbon skirts and things like that, and learning things about my culture. And it just really has made me be like the best version of myself that I couldn't do alone. And it's just really beautiful. And I even got to make my first drum too.
All right.
And so it's really nice to be able to go into spaces and offer like songs, and being able to use my drum And yeah, like it's really nice just being able to have like all this support and knowing that I wouldn't have done it without IPTF and the theater company, because they really did open me up to all these opportunities and really made me know that, you know, we're not alone and we can always rely on each other.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Nathan?
Oh, hi. Well, Hamadak Yapi, Wakia Washaka Hemie, Nawashichuya, Nathan Berglund, and Machiapi. Hello, my relatives. My name is Nathan Berglund, but my spirit name is Strong Thunderbird. And Oglala Lakota, Northern Cheyenne. And like Kirby said, I've been in Akitawin since I was about 12. But yet it feels like a lifetime since I've known Kirby and Suzanne. But you know, I'm truly grateful to Akitawin and IPTF in general, because just like Jennifer said, you know, I was also a really shy kid, always hiding behind my mom, you know, whenever we go to the grocery store. But, you know, I don't think I ever would have got into theater. I mean, maybe eventually, but, you know, they opened my eyes to it when I was only 12 years old and gave that 12-year-old me a voice to bring on stage and to tell other people, you know, that message that we're bringing in. Because like Kirby said, we have so many different plays about so many different topics that our communities need to hear and that we need to talk about. And, you know, for me to only be 13 years old, traveling around the country, spreading this message, it really brought power to not only myself, but to my peers around me. You know, we realized that people want to hear our voices. And that was probably the first time in my life where I felt like somebody wanted to hear what I'm saying.
Mm.
And, you know, especially coming from a Native youth, like a lot of Native youth don't leave the city. You know, they don't get those opportunities to go travel to other reservations or go travel to Washington, D.C. or even to Ireland, you know. And like, I just think that I'm so grateful for all the opportunities that they've given me, because now I'm started on this path of trying to find out who I am as an artist. You know, now I'm doing this production with Kirby and Pangeo World Theater. And so, like, I don't think without a Kidwin, I don't think I would be in this position. You know, maybe I would still be, I would go into carpentry or, you know, something else. But because I got started at such a young age, so many like different doors have opened to me. And I have these different, you know, abilities that I can do, like use my voice. Like, I don't believe that, you know, 20-year-old me without theater would be able to go and tell people my message confidently and say, this is who I am. And so I'm very grateful.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's beautiful. Wow.
Nathan's acting in Hecuba right now, and so he's in a classical piece, and so getting that diversity and being able to do something like that, and I'm assistant director on that piece, so it's really nice to grow. We're growing together.
That's fantastic. Just kind of overarchingly, this is kind of a general question, but from a native, from the native way of being, how important is music, dance, art? I mean, is it as we assume, is it an integral part of your of many of your traditions and community gatherings and community connectedness? I'll add, Sir Curtis, can you answer that?
Yeah, I'll start. It's a major part of who we are. I mean, the beat of the drum is like a heartbeat, you know, and our ceremonies and things, everything emblems something, even down to the sweat lodge, is like the womb of your mother, you know. And so we come into this world in a gush of water. No, that's that's a line from a play that we have. But no, we come into this world, you know, really, you know, being in tune with that. And I think the Western models often don't consider you an artist until you get a MFA or until you get, you know, and I highly appreciate that. I'm not knocking those things, but we come into this world as artists, you know, we come to this world singing and dancing and telling stories, you know. And so, you know, often you have to get somewhere to be classified, but I want these young people to know from the day that they were born, they were artists, you know, and, you know, as they grow and they, you know, everything that you have, I think a lot of times people have to search for what they have, but we have it right here, you know. We have it in our teachings, we have it in our ways. And so even when we go to other, Jennifer talked about like being able to, you know, like I was in New York and I was at the national Native American Museum, and I was seeing all this artwork that was from like the 1800s, and it's just beautiful artwork, like mind blowing artwork, you know. And I just want our youth to know that these things are inside of you. And so even we're urban indigenous folks, you know, we're from Minneapolis, probably one of the largest populated of indigenous urban areas in the United States. And we go to a lot of these reservations, we go to a lot of these different places, and we're sharing what we have. And I always tell them when I go there, you know, we go there, the kids are really shy, they're really nervous. Sometimes adults are trying to speak for them. And I say, no, let them speak for themselves. Like, we're here to grow. We're here to, you know, learn to use our voices. We've had so much trauma and so many things oppressed of us that sometimes, you know, it's like ripping coats off, ripping off layers. But once you rip off those layers, you have ultimately what you need. And now you have to, you know, through craft, through rigor, you know, we enhance those things. We enhance our artistry, you know, and we share and we give back. You know, we've always been a trading culture. And so sometimes when we go there and, you know, we enlighten, you know, we start to open up those doors of theater and, you know, tell them like you have these things that you need, you know, they share something with us and back in return. You know, they give us a little culture maybe of something we've been missing. You know, they might give us some, you know, language, they might give us artwork, you know, and different type of things. And that led into, you know, we just did a really big fashion show and we'll continue to do a fashion show this year. And not just your regular fashion show, a performative fashion show, you know, with singing and dancing and us making our own regalia. And like Jennifer was one of the designers. And I think also like when we expand, we don't just want to be actors and, you know, actors and directors and things like that. There's so many different avenues when you think about the theater world, when you think about production assistants, when you think about lighting designers, you think about costume design. And, you know, we have a lot of those tools already. So when you talk about singing, dancing, and, you know, creating, we've been doing that for as long as I could remember, since I was a kid. So I didn't just enter this world, you know, into directing 13 years ago. This is something that it was already inside of me. And I think inside of a lot of our youth. And even if it's not there, once you start to rummage it up, it runs in their lineage. And so
That's great. That's great. Suzanne, how have you personally seen the effect and the impact, especially in the utilization of theater and art? Does it help to expand and deepen people's understanding?
Yeah, I really believe that it does. I think like some of the those components of being able to like Nathan and Jennifer said, being able to use your voice, being connected to those cultural teachings is the core of our work. We use culture as prevention. We use the teachings to do the education, and then the education through theater reaches that broader community in our work, and we're able to continue that. And I think, you know, as Native people, we've always, and probably with all Indigenous people, have always known that music, that vibration is what sends the message, right? It's the vibration, it's that heartbeat of the drum that makes you feel all of that is going on, and to, you know, send that vibration out to the rest of the world. That's something we've always done. And storytelling has always been a big part of who we are. I can remember my mom telling me that when she was a kid, her dad would like take her outside and draw in the dirt,
Mm.
you know, and tell a story in that. You know, that was another way of, you know, telling stories. And then we've always done that in some form and throughout our life. And I think, you know, we grew up very culturally grounded. Kirby is my nephew, and I used to pick him up from the boys choir. He was in the boys choir here in Minneapolis, St. Paul, one of the biggest boys choir there is. You know, he was only 11 years old, getting up at 6 a.m. for me to drop him off there by 7. He spent many Saturdays at that boys choir, traveling around. He was introduced to different cultures. He was introduced to different races, you know, because that boys choir is made up of a lot of different people. And
Mhm.
so, you know, him being diversified, you know, was what helped him grow. Also, the fact that he grew up in a Gitchada, because Sharon was the theater director in the beginning of time, and he was just a little guy following along. So he's been doing this majority of his life growing up. And it's kind of the same thing with these guys. They were younger. The younger you can get it, the better off
Mm.
they are. You know, we talk about having Minneapolis and St. Paul being from across the river, but they are so different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And versed. They're not diverse. And so we always felt like it was important. One of the things Kirby said, man, when we go over to St. Paul and we go over to Minneapolis, like it's so different. We got to make sure that these kids are diversified. They're in meeting different people, and and so that has really become a big part of what we do. And then it also led into my policy work, teaching the kids about policy and how to use their voice. They go to the Capitol, they talk to legislators. They wouldn't be able probably to do this had we not done some components of the theater and role playing. That's the first introduction to it, is the role playing, and then having them create their own stories on what's going on in their community. And that's how we started off, some small, and then they go into, full on theater productions. And like Kirby said, tobacco first, creating that play, that tobacco doing that play took us across, I don't know how many states. And so that tobacco continues to be the root of where we are, where we're going, and it's made those connections across, and it's still doing it today. And so it's that ceremony, it's those cultural practices that we use is how we're able to be successful, and using that storytelling version of who we are and how are we going to educate the community. Stories are powerful.
That's
And
great.
so that's how we like to share.
That's beautiful. Vyavrata, I mean, how does this land with you? What are you hearing here? Just knowing that Taya artistry is really made up foundationally of the sharing of story and the utilization of story to create a theatrical message. So, and as someone who is on this arts and health journey, but also someone who has been on the journey of the utilization of story and theater, what are you hearing here? How is this landing with you?
Well, first of all, thank you for letting me be a part of this conversation. I'm just so happy to meet all of you, and particularly you all guests, as it were, of this podcast, or whatever we're calling it, this chat. What you've been saying is, to use your word, Fred, like there's a reverberation, right? And Jennifer, you said being part of the theater company, being part of the Indigenous peoples
Task
task force, taught you what love is. And there was my heart just like blew open when you said that, and that connection, story, being seen, being asked, being listened to, and having that then sink in deep enough that you have that confidence. And Nathan, you talked about this too, the confidence to then go out and say it out loud and give that love, give that story, give that confidence to others, just like broke me open today. So I appreciate so much all four of you and what you've been doing and talking about, the commitment to using what you have known for so deeply and so deeply and for so long, just that art, story, magic, right? Ceremony matters. It matters individually and communally, and then nationally, and then internationally. So I'm really, really, really grateful to be part of this conversation, to hear your journeys. And again, that reverberation, I think, is something, that connection. Now I feel connected to you all, to the whole screen right now feels much more three-dimensional than two-dimensional. So I really appreciate everything that you're doing and said, and from artist to artist, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Viev. Nicole, we wouldn't be here having this experience were it not for you and your inspiration that you received when you went and spent time with Suzanne and folk in Minnesota, and also as a researcher, also as someone who is deeply entrenched in the arts and health community and the conversation, and from a public health standpoint of view. Again, how do you receive this? And just share a little bit of the importance of why you made that call to me, and and what we're hearing today, and how does this really so beautifully fit into the arts and health conversation.
There's so much to say, Fred, with that question, but I guess I just want to say, you know, I have truly been, I have learned so much from Suzanne, and so I'm so grateful that we're all here today. So I just want to really acknowledge that relationship with Suzanne, and that's one of the things that I also feel is that you know, art brings people together, right? And so I have to say, just as Suzanne said, there's something that deeply touches people because we all are is part of all of our lives, whether we recognize it or not. And so the kind of messages that are brought out and taken out into the world with the work that Indigenous Peoples Task Force does, then connect people to one another who might not know each other, be connected to one another. My kind of connection with Suzanne is more through that public health lens and initially through that work. But then it's all these other connections that we've made because we've been in spaces where there have been teachings and there's been ceremony, right? That you recognize that these things they're part of everyone, just the way that many people live. So I think there's a lot of different ways to answer the question you asked, but more than anything, I'd say that we're hearing about voice and the power of voice for the individual, but then collectively how that voice connects people and also moves us forward. So much of what you heard Suzanne and Kirby talk about is really health justice and social justice, right? And we can't talk about the art becomes, right, utilizing art and traditional forms of art is a way to begin to move that needle forward also, because it's, again, it creates power and connection.
Yeah. Beautiful,
And
beautiful.
one other thing I just want to say too, that I think we talked a lot about the youth, but also the incredible connection that young people have also to elders through this work. Because elders and our ancestors, right, are really acknowledged in the core of teachings and connection. And so I've really been fortunate to be part of the Return to First Medicines gathering that Suzanne organizes. And it would be great for her to kind of talk about that and how young people and elders are in a space together, and all of this is, goes on together.
As a person, that was going to be my next my next step. And just before that, I want to ask Alice. Alice, you are so strongly responsible for leading what happens in the area of arts education through the Patel Conservatory at the Straz Center. But also, as I said earlier, that when we first started this journey together around really kind of helping and guiding our institution to understand the importance of art and health. I prior to coming back to the Straz Center, because I'd been there for a number of years and then spent about 15 years out in the world utilizing art in areas in the world of conflict, communities of conflict, using music, dance, theater, and art as a way to create new ways for communities to know each other and to share each other's stories. And when I came back and Alice and I began to talk about that, it was really, we had to kind of press folk to say, look, there's way more to this than what's happening. So as Vice President of Education, and as you hear this, what are some important components in terms of what we're doing and the importance of including this conversation in the journey?
Have to say that hearing this conversation and being a part of it has really made my heart very happy. Jennifer and Nathan, just listening to how the arts have impacted you and being a part of this program is the reason why I got into arts education, and being able to really help support our youth and what they are looking to achieve, and the confidence that both of you have displayed on this conversation, I know makes it all worth it to the team that you are working with. And you guys will be the future leaders of tomorrow, passing down those stories and telling others why this is so important. So I just wanted to say thank you to both of you for joining us today and really sharing your truth as we're going through this. As an institution, we do have a very strong commitment in arts education. And now, as we've entered into our arts and health arena, being able to connect how the arts truly impact every part of our being has become our focus through the power of storytelling, through the power of music. There are so many different intersections that occur that you would have never thought of, oh, there's a scientific impact as well. But truly for us, it's also really looking at the human whole and being able to provide access points that really elevate them for their personal well-being, and being able to share that story with others. Because as Nicole said, the arts bring us all together. And how more of a beautiful way can we do that if we're also healing through the process and helping one another?
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Alice. Yes, Suzanne, please share with us the First Medicine Conference and expound upon what Nicole was saying in terms of young and elders. Being an elder myself, I like talk to us about that conference.
Yeah, I just wanted to also something I was thinking I wanted to add is that storytelling is also healing. And healing begins when we can tell the story. And for so long, like, people suppress that and trauma, down from generations. So when you can actually vocalize that, you can say it out loud, you can talk about it, wherever that trauma is coming from, the loss of a family member, from, the loss of you're taking away that relationship to addiction, that's a loss, right? And so being able to say that out loud is where the healing comes in. And even just far as mental health goes, so I really feel like the storytelling weaving into theater and arts and song is a way of healing, and also, sending that message. So I just really feel strong in that. And so the Return to First Medicines was created about 10 years ago through some grants that we had. And at first it started off prior to that, 5 years prior to that, about tobacco control work, reclaiming traditional tobacco. And our focus was basically on the public health education around tobacco. And so we created some plays around tobacco. And as we grew, like we said, we moved into reaching out to a spiritual person who was my mentor, who's still one of my mentors, where, we wanted to look at this from, like Kirby said, we have it inside of us. Just needs to be awakened sometimes. And so we talked about that, and I asked him, I said, what does that look like? And he said, it's remembering what you always knew. And we kind of got onto that topic. And then I told him, I said, we want to do this conference. And I offered him some tobacco, and I said, I kind of want to know which direction I should go. Can you help me out here? And he said, yeah. He said, let me, I'll either I'll have a dream about it, or I'll go out and fast for it. And so came back to talking about what we always knew. And he said that in the language, and he said, this is where you need to go by. And I said, returning to our first medicines. And he said, that's it. Returning to first medicines. That's where you want it to go. So we went on this journey together. He helped open up a few of the conferences with us, and we focused on maternal health as a whole in the beginning. And maternal health not just being for women, maternal health being for men as well, and thinking about what you do to your body now, not and before your present time to having kids, because people are like, oh, maternal health, like thinking when you're getting ready to have a baby. And we talked about maternal health as a whole, the whole generational, all of that, how that impacts you now. And so that was our focus, and talking about food is medicine. our cultural foods as medicine, talking about the 7 grandfather teachings, which is like our, the Western model has the 10 commandments, right? Well, we have the 7 grandfather teachings, and then there's 9 for Lakota and Dakota. So that conference really came together to focus on food sovereignty, growing your own food, talking about tobacco being our first medicine, and, making sure that we bring communities together. But we didn't do any of that without having a council of grandmothers or grandfathers to help us along this path. They help me plan the conference every year. And every year it shifted a little bit different because, like Kirby said, when we were talking earlier, it goes based upon the community needs, right? So some of our topics will change. Last year we focused on, we still focus on our medicines and who we are and that we're still here and our cultural teachings, but we'll add a few pieces. Last year we focused on grief and healing. Grief has been big as we've lost over 110,000 people to opiates across the United States. And so we knew that we needed to talk about grief and what does that look like and how do we move forward in a good way. But we also talk about people just losing people in general and how we do that. And we brought a grandmother from Mexico, Miss Rita, who came in and talked about bringing the North and the South together to create some healing, to bring the eagle and the condor together, the Megazee, and she focused on bringing that healing to the whole conference at the time that was needed. And so over the years, we've always had a youth component. Some conferences will separate youth and have a youth section, and then they'll have an adult section. We don't do that. We feel like the youth need to be involved with their parents or their adults, and they need to be right there alongside learning just as we do, as we always learn from them. So we've always, in the beginning, when I first started, it was like a youth track and adult track. Well, we grew from that. We realized that, no, we need to bring them together. We need to be whole. And so that's what we do. And then a couple of years ago, I had this vision about using our regalia as a way to send a message, to create it, thinking that culture is prevention, and how do we still do some of our cultural teachings and still do education. And so we created the youth fashion show. So I told Kirby I have this vision. I knew he could bring it together in the theater part component of it, but also we would bring in that fashion show and also them creating their own regalia and modeling that regalia in their own version and vision of it. Like, what do they see? What do they want? So a lot of times youth are always told here's what you're going to do. Well, we don't do that at IPTF. And sometimes we do, but in most part, we give them the opportunity to create and, give us feedback on what they want. And they all created their own regalia, designed it themselves from scratch, drawing it, to putting it to life, to having it sewed, and they modeled that fashion, those clothing designs, based upon their vision. And then they had some spoken word poems that they presented individually and then collectively as a group with some dance and music. And each of one of them had, written their own poems on their take about vaping and e-cigarettes. How does it affect them? How does it affect their family? They wrote their own. And so really that's what that Return to First Medicine is about. It's about bringing community together, strengthening our stories, preserving our foods, preserving our culture, and growing that next generation is really that approach to bringing all the people together at that conference.
Wow. This is all so inspiring and so very, very important as I traverse the country and engage in these national conversations about arts and healing. Not until maybe a couple of other times when myself and a couple of people have infused it, but not so strongly has this concept of cultural teachings been really infused into the conversation. You know, my dad was a man who, not a whole lot of words, but one of the most important things he said is you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. And in terms of the foundation of this nation, the cultural teachings that our native brothers and sisters can teach us as a real foundation for understanding the land, for understanding community in a broader way. This is so very, very important. So first and foremost, we're just really honored to have this opportunity to communicate with you. We're really looking forward to your participation with us this coming May at our Arts and Mind convening, so that this conversation can be heard by more folk that are in the arts and health conversation. I'm hoping to be able to join you at this year's First Medicine convening. Really, really looking forward, Jennifer and Nathan and other members of the theater company, along with Sir Curtis, to be able maybe next year, you know, to be with us live, because this is beyond actualization. You know, this whole, and the conversation that myself as an artist and other artists have had with our science and research colleagues is the fact that this culture, you know, the interesting thing is that, you know, the United States is referred to as kind of a melting pot or a cornucopia, but there's not a single shared cultural teaching that we all move from. We bring elements. You know, I come from a West African tradition of story and dance and music, and, you know, and have been blessed by my elders to be called to, you know, bring that into a contemporary setting. The knowledge that Viev and Taya artistry brings through, you know, insight to conflict transformation and community, you know, transformation. You know, what Nicole, you know, her learning around visual thinking strategies. You know, the expertise that Alice brings in terms of working in the arts and understanding how to create structure so that the art story can be expanded. But this cultural teaching concept, you know, to recognize the foundation of that, you all are doing it. It's happened for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so please know, and I say this all the time, that cultural root is at the very foundation of how the mind, you know, they say the longest distance traveled is the distance between the head and the heart. And so through that cultural teaching, through that cultural foundation, the heart fuses, and our way of being is created from in the heart, in our beingness of our heart as a community, so that which we learn and know can come together for the greater good of everybody. And that in and of itself is a formula for healing. And ultimately, that's what we want. So we could be here for 5 hours, and unfortunately we're not able to do that. But I'd like to, you know, offer Suzanne and Sir Curtis and Nathan and Jennifer just some final thoughts, you know, final thoughts as we come kind of to the close of this time together. And we'll start, Sir Curtis, with you for some final thoughts.
No, it's beautiful to be in rooms like this, and I truly always stress to, you know, my young people that, you know, our connection of people, our network, you know, and the understanding of each other. Like Suzanne said, you know, it's always a privilege to learn about other cultures and other people and to connect to the world. And that's, you know, and through, like Jennifer said, through love and through our art form is how we believe this world can be a better place. And so with everything going on in the world today, and, you know, all the different genocides, I really believe as artists, we are, you know, some of the bravest people on the front lines of really change makers. And, you know, and we have the opportunity to touch people's hearts, you know, with the work that we do. And so I look forward to being down there in May and working with you. And I look forward to, at some point, you know, I always advocate for my young people to be able to travel. And so like my mentor says, it's already happened, you know what I mean? And so I just look forward to bringing this all together. And just shout out to Sharon Day, our executive director, our playwright, the person who believes in us and makes all this happen. And thank you all for having us here to have this conversation and shedding light on us. Miigwech.
Very good, very good. Nathan, final thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit, hearing about like song, and like how our ancestors have already lived all that. We have a song for everything. We have a ceremony for everything, and we have a teaching for everything.
Mm,
So it's like our ancestors already paved the way for us. So
mm,
we could live, how we do with our teachings, with pride, with respect. And now it's our duty, even though I'm still a young person, to pave the way for the new generation. Not just think about my grandchildren, but my grandchildren's grandchildren. And how can
mm.
I help them to have the best life so we can continue on these teachings, so I can educate them about Native culture, Native traditions. And so I'm very happy to be here and meet all of you guys. And yeah, so thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's our honor. Thank you, Nathan. Jennifer?
And
Oh,
oh, I just
yes.
wanted to share one more thing. And
Sure, sure, sure.
in Lakota culture, like at the end of a prayer, we always say "Midakuye Oyasi," which means we are all related.
Mm,
And so I just wanted to share that.
that's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Miss Jennifer.
Uh, I guess what I wanted to say is that the representation really does matter. And, being able to be a Native person and going on stage. And then after we're done, like we will go ahead and talk to people and they will come up to us. And, you know, one time we went to high school in Chaska and we had 3 youth doing a performance. And afterwards, like this girl came up to us and she was like, I'm one of the 3 Native students in this whole school. And it was so important for me to like hear
Mm,
that because it was like we were able to speak to everybody, but we really were able to speak to that one person. And like we were able to be in that school where she doesn't have a lot of people who are Native. And so you know uh we do these workshops and we add, when we're working on a play right now and we talk to our youth and we make them do poetry and stuff and they're able to bring their own truth into our play. So it's not just things that we write, it's also their stories and what they want people to know about what it's like in their lives. And yeah, the representation really does matter.
absolutely. It so much does. Yes. Thank you, Jennifer. Final thoughts, Suzanne?
I'm just grateful to be here and to be in the space and to be able to share a lot of what we do. So like in these moments like now, I'm like, I start to think about, man, we've done a lot of work and we've grown and we've watched these 2 young ones grow. And I'm so grateful for that. Like, I believe that I'm just here to bring it together. And these guys have done the work. They've actually done the work to change communities' thoughts, to help others use their voice, and I'm just so grateful for that. And, you know, it's just such an opportunity to be able to be here in this space and to share that. But it's a reminder to them, like what they've done and where they are, and that the reminder that we are visible and we are still here. Representation matters, and that it's important to be grateful for what we have now, but I'm also grateful for what's to come. And I just want to continue to build on that foundation of gratefulness and being able to do this work uh, and be able to, and again, like Kirby said, thankful for Sharon for letting us be creative and dreaming up these things. Because sometimes when I do come up with these things, sometimes she looks at me like, you want to do what? Like the Indigenous baby food, and the fashion show, Kirby was like, what? Okay. So he's always been adaptable when I say, I had this vision, and he's like, and he makes it happen. At the end of the day, he makes it happen. He rolls in uh uh the theater part of it and the movement part of it. And he's always like, you always want to do something extra, but he makes it happen. So I'm just grateful that he has that vision and that talent to be able to see what I'm saying, and be able to see and feel it. And then the kids do. These guys, they knock it out of the park every time when they do their performances and their shows. And they did it again today. So I'm just grateful for them. And thank you for having us be in this space.
We have a surprise guest, Sharon Day, our executive director, the lady I just Oh, thanks. Before she walked into my house just a moment ago. So, say hey, Sharon.
Hi,
Hi,
everyone.
Sharon. How are you? Thank you for being with us, and thank you for all that you do foundationally to make this happen. We deeply appreciate it. We feel very, very honored to have this opportunity to have Suzanne and Sir Curtis and Nathan and Jennifer be a part of this conversation here, and for you all and what you do to become a part of our way forward with our arts and health message. So thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, you're being recorded.
All right, and I think my team members, Nicole and Viev and Alice, will join me in saying what a great honor this is, and we look forward to your participation with us in May. We look forward to forging a way forward in collaboration with us here at the Straz Center and our arts and health initiatives, and most importantly, to really, really, really create an opportunity to amplify your native culture and teachings, your history, and the foundation that you are in this nation that we have so much to learn from. Alice, thank you for all that you do to, keep it going forward. Viev and Nicole, deeply, deeply appreciate your participation all of the time. And our thanks to our colleagues at Johns Hopkins, at the International Art and Mind Lab, who help us to really kind of complete the threads in the tapestry of our way forward with arts and health. And as always, I thank each and every one of you out there who share with us one of your greatest commodities, and that's your time, as we continue to share this conversation and this way forward in an effort to really amplify the importance of creativity in the health and well-being of our world, both individually and collectively. And no program is complete until a little cat or an animal comes in. So thank you, Jennifer, for including your animal there. So we have our brothers and sisters from the animal kingdom here with us. Okay. I'm Fred Johnson. Thanks for being with us. Thanks, everybody. And until next time, take care. Peace to everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.